Who among us hasn't wondered what would happen if you set off a nuke in space? Nobody. That's who. Here's the crazy thing though, it's actually been done before. As unfortunate as it may be, atomic weapons have been a part of the public conversation since the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Though this act forced the last remaining Axis forces to surrender in 1945, it came at a terrible cost.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
While the effects of nuclear weapons on the ground are unfortunately very well documented, it's worth asking what would happen if a nuclear weapon was detonated in space or just inside the atmosphere. It might seem fairly far-fetched. Heck, this concept was a plot point in the 2009 video game Call of Duty: Modern Warfare 2, in which a nuclear missile launched by a Russian submarine is detonated above Washington, D.C. But despite the rest of the plot being mostly blockbuster nonsense, nuclear weapons have actually been detonated in space in real life. A nuclear weapon test, dubbed Starfish Prime, was conducted on July 9, 1962 by the Los Alamos National Laboratory. The team aimed to see what would happen if a 1.45 megaton nuclear bomb was detonated 250 miles above the Pacific Ocean. For reference, a 1.45 megaton bomb has roughly 100 times more power than the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. From a visual perspective, the explosion was reportedly a sight to behold, as it was said to look as if the Aurora Borealis was taking place over Hawaii. For thousands of miles, spectators could see flashes of red, green, or blue streaks across the sky for about half an hour. After it exploded, the hydrogen bomb let off an electromagnetic pulse that fried electronic devices and knocked out power even 1,000 miles away in Hawaii. Additionally, Telstar 1, an AT&T communications satellite, was damaged shortly after launch by residual radiation. It was eventually knocked out of commission as a result. Nuclear researchers learned firsthand that even if a nuclear weapon doesn't hit a target directly or go off in an airburst, it can still remain incredibly dangerous. Both the Soviet Union and the United States knew they needed to tread lightly if testing were to ever happen again. The launch vehicle for this payload was a Thor Intermediate Range Ballistic Missile, developed by Douglas. The missile is a single-stage rocket capable of producing 150,000 pounds of thrust from its main engine. For comparison, the Lockheed F-104C, a design of the same era, only made 15,800 pounds of thrust. Interestingly enough, after the nuclear tests, the Thor missile system took on a somewhat less aggressive role for NASA as a space launch vehicle. The Starfish Prime test may have been the highest altitude nuclear weapons test, but it wasn't the first time the United States sent nuclear missiles high into the sky. Earlier, in 1958, 3 of the 35 bombs detonated as part of Operation Hardtack 1 had been carried out at high altitudes. The first high-altitude test, named Yucca, only ever reached an altitude of about 16 miles above Earth, but the second test, named Teak, was a Redstone missile that detonated its 3.8 megaton payload at an altitude of 50 miles. That's pretty high, but not quite considered space. Orange was the second test that used the same payload and missile. This one went off 25 miles up. According to Rear Admiral Daniel W. McKinnon Jr., a U.S. Navy officer who was present at the tests, the blast was so bright that it appeared to be daytime at the moment they went off. The Starfish Prime and Hardtack tests were successful insofar as both the Soviet Union and the United States realized they shouldn't do it again. The Limited Nuclear Test Ban Treaty signed by John F. Kennedy in 1963 banned high-altitude tests like Starfish Prime from happening in the future. While it could be argued that American nuclear weapon tests advanced nuclear science and helped develop tactics to lessen the effects of a nuclear blast, it's also true that nuclear weapons testing isn't something that should happen regularly. As a matter of fact, the United States hasn't tested a nuclear weapon since 1992. Nations such as North Korea still occasionally test nuclear weapons, but it's unlikely that countries like that would gamble with a test like Starfish Prime or even Hardtack. If a larger bomb were ever set off in space, as unlikely as that is to happen, it's easy to imagine that the resulting technological destruction would be extremely heavy, as power would likely be disrupted over a large portion of the landmass below. Thankfully, with the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, the risk of all-out nuclear war has dropped significantly, and so too have the chances that a nuclear weapon will ever again be detonated in space.